Part of the reason that Reddit was the number 6 most searched term on Google last year is people are typing in, what's the best crypto app? Reddit. So that they get those Reddit results instead of the sponsored links and all the things that you might not know are actually real. And so for anyone listening right now, go onto your search engine of choice, type in what's the best crypto app or best sports betting app or best casual game to play while I'm at the airport. Do that on Google and do that on Reddit Answers. And so the more time that I'm doing researching from a trusted place, the better. And so that's like the real difference in use case that we've seen with AI as being able to summarize those 20 years of conversations.
This podcast is sponsored by Pragmatic Solutions, the player account management platform chosen by today's smart betting and gaming operators. Don't let technical constraints delay you from achieving your business goals. Expand your business, boost your margins, and dominate the market in any leading regulated jurisdiction with our powerful, flexible, and secure iGaming platform. Enjoy its extensive marketing tools, compliance protection, real-time data, and a wide portfolio of over 1,000 industry providers. It's time to upgrade your technology. Let Pragmatic Solutions show you the modern approach. Visit pragmatic.solutions and join the smart thinkers.
This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
And bingo, bango, bongo, Ryan, Angerami, great to have you on the podcast here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Pierre. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you, Ryan, because today a childhood dream of mine is coming true as an avid Reddit user of the last 20 or so years. I have the pleasure of having you guys here today to discuss one of the most popular websites in the world. In fact, I read somewhere that it's the 8th most visited website globally ahead of Wikipedia. That's a pretty crazy stat.
It is nuts. It's nuts. The stat that we're throwing around too is it was the 6th largest search term on Google last year, which when you consider the company that we were around, I think the rate above us was the word news. So we're in pretty good company in terms of popularity.
Amazing. I love it. And Ryan, you're the senior director of app development of Reddit. And one kind of change that I've seen lately with Reddit is that after the IPO that happened some months ago, the company is becoming more kind of commercially driven now. And this has always been a thing in the background of Reddit, which has kind of, it's been one of the most popular websites in the world. But say revenue-wise or valuation-wise, let's say it's never been even close to, the giant like Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. But that is kind of what you are leading the charge of right now, right? Is to kind of get that more commercial drive into Reddit as well as the incredible popularity around the website.
Yeah, I definitely can't take credit for all of the revenue that we've been focused on. But we were talking just before. I've been here at Reddit for just past 7 years, and so much has changed, since those early days. I think the thing that stands out is Jen Wong, our COO. We actually started the exact same week about 7 years ago, and when you find like recordings of things that she said 7 years ago, all the stuff is still our mission today, right? There's obviously like the consumer mission, bringing that community belonging to the entire world. That's a whole lot more human beings that would need to work at the company too to get all that stuff going. But the reality of what we have been building since 2018, 2019 has been sort of this race to parity on like direct response, on performance advertising. And so my teams for app developer sales, we really focus on those types of advertisers. So those that are looking for, user acquisition, app downloads, typically like a focus on like lifetime value. And so the good thing about Reddit is that we kind of have solutions for a lot of different things, right? So whether you wanted to do a big branding push, if you wanted to talk to communities, if you wanted to do, direct response for anything from like a small business to like a Fortune 100 company. It's been being built out for a while now, and it's nice to see it finally come to fruition.
Brilliant, Ryan. And I mean, Reddit is truly one of those sites that have stood the test of time. The community angle obviously came to life those many years ago, and it's still kind of staying true to the origins of Reddit. And not much have changed throughout the years. The principles are still the same with the subreddits, and you communicate through threads and so on. But I'm curious to know from your perspective, as the one of the most visited websites in the world, if you were to boil down the success to a few simple principles, why is the site so popular, and what has made Reddit stand that test of time?
Yeah, it's so interesting. The site's just over 20 years old now, and you think about like all of the change that has happened in the last 20 years of, the start of YouTube, the start of Facebook, the start of Instagram, Twitter, Snap, TikTok, all these different platforms. And I think part of that staying power for Reddit is that it's a very similar platform from like where it started. I think the thing that got me onto the platform, which I think maybe a lot of other people would maybe agree with, is when I'm on a different platform, I'm a curated version of myself, right? Like I am sharing only the photos that are like, the best possible experience from like me and our family going on vacation.
Yeah.
Or I'm only sharing like the most positive updates, right? That like paint me in a good light. Whereas on Reddit, because of that anonymity, you can be your real and authentic self. And, there's everything from like really silly communities to, everything from like financial service communities, self-help communities. One of the ones that particularly got me into the site was this community called Daddit, Daddit. And this for me is sort of like the culmination of like what makes Reddit special. I have a 9-year-old little boy, and not so little anymore. And on Daddit, it's a parenting subreddit, and people talk about literally everything and anything about raising their kids. Everything from struggles that they're having to like really silly moments. There's like a spin-off subreddit called Daddit Chefs, where we all share ideas of what are you making your kid for lunch the next day, because it's hard to know what you're going to make sometimes. And I can't have that experience on another platform, right? So I think that's been the real, at its core, just authentic human beings that aren't there to be an influencer or showcase themselves. It's really about trying to just make whatever community you're a part of the best version of itself.
Yeah, it's true, but I think what is interesting with Reddit, because there are other anonymous using platforms as well. I mean, you have the 4chan, 8chan, and the difference between the two perhaps is that Reddit has always had a really positive tone, even in the logo, right? It's a smiling alien, and it has always had that very kind of innocent, positive tone to it, let's say. Whereas anonymity on the internet is generally associated with negativity and like perhaps some of humanity's darker side often. And that is perhaps also a big key to the success, that by and large, most people are seeking themselves to that positive side. But like, why do you think Reddit became a source for that kind of overall positivity and the positive tone rather than, spiraling downwards, let's say?
Yeah. I mean, there's, it's a lot of humans on this platform. Not everyone's positive. I'd say
no, that's for sure. Yeah. And not always positive towards Reddit either, right?
Totally.
Has fair share of conflicts.
Yeah. And like some subreddits exist for conflict too, right? But I think the thing that has really set, I think, Reddit apart for that particular question is, we have human moderators, right? Like there's actual people that run these communities because they're passionate about that community. And I think if you're devoting that kind of time to, whether it's run the community, create rules around it, some communities do meetups in real life, you don't want that place to be a place of like toxicity or negativity, right? So I think that human moderation touch, where folks are making sure that, folks aren't unnecessarily bad actors and like dragging the rest of the subreddit down, is one huge part of it. And I think the other part of it too is just the community itself, right? Like it takes maybe like a step back from that moderation side of things, where you want that thing to thrive. And that doesn't mean you can't have discourse and you can't have disagreements, because I think discourse is a huge part of Reddit, like being able to like come to terms with like a question that's being asked or like a controversial statement. And because those kind of conversations can happen and it's not, just divulging into vitriol every single time, I think that's also what keeps people coming back to it as well.
Yeah, that's true. I would add as well, perhaps, that just the upvotes feature
Yeah.
is a huge part of this too, right? Where like I think maybe it's like a human nature thing that by and large, we reward positive behavior. Whereas like maybe on other platforms, there is a different culture and more toxicity is maybe rewarded on that part. But Reddit, there's a reason why Reddit is again one of the most popular websites in the world, and that is like upvote feature where the most relevant and kind of fact-based and rich content is getting upvoted by a large enough part of the community for that to be the content that is featured, right? Because there is that part of the self-moderation in a way where at the end of the day, the content that you are presented with is the content that the larger community decides is the best content, right? So there's that like self-moderation part of it as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you see this with upvoting and downvoting. It's a very democratic system, right? Bad content gets downvoted because if it's something that's not factual or doesn't actually have any substance to it or is off topic from the conversation that's happening, that's not something that's going to be relevant for that community or that conversation. And just like you mentioned, if it's something that maybe not even positive, if it's just something that like, hey, this is on topic, this is like a factual take, somebody did their research. And, I think you can think about this from gaming subreddits to parenting subreddits to financial services subreddits, like sports, right? Like there's everything under the sun where you have very educated individuals or very passionate individuals on a certain thing. And if they are putting in that effort to add content to the conversation, I think folks recognize that even if they don't necessarily disagree or agree with the comment being said.
Yeah, true. I would say, for myself, right, being an avid Reddit user for most of my adult life, most of my political thoughts or news I get, and just the information that I accrue or the interest that I like to learn about, like the history part that I like to learn about as well, like most of that learnings and like what shaped my views usually comes from Reddit, but it doesn't actually come from the links that are shared. It comes from the comments often, right? So if there is an interesting news article or a headline, for me, I would rather read the most interesting comments than to hear what the larger context from the users are thinking, rather than a edited piece by an editor with a certain angle from a certain newspaper, let's say. And I think perhaps that also plays part of the success in Reddit, that generally newspapers, even if they call themselves kind of unbiased or independent, there is still an editor that is choosing which news to be featured and which news should not be featured. So whereas on Reddit, it is that power of the community that decides what is the most relevant content at any given time, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, the comments are where it's at. That's where the most witty things happen. That's where you also find yourself going into tons of different parts of the site that you didn't even know existed. I mean, I think the community, the comments themselves end up being like the biggest discovery for me for new communities. And so like I might be in one community that's talking about one different thing, and you get into the rabbit hole of commentary and people talking about different subjects or spiraling off into a completely different thing. And then often they'll link to another subreddit that like talks about that thing, and then you find yourself maybe hours deep into Reddit.
Yeah, that's the thing. But then, the other side of the coin is then, people like me who like to get the information from comments. How are you thinking about
that? I'll get two answers for you. I think one is a similar thread from what we were talking about, right? That the community is really smart, right? I think they're always going to be smarter than us, right? In the sense that they tend to be wittier, they tend to come up with like really creative things, and they also tend to know when somebody is not necessarily presenting the right story or the right facts. And so with that, just the same thing that we talked about of the upvotes and downvotes being this like pretty democratic process to make sure that good content comes to the top and bad goes to the bottom. community, like the Redditors themselves are really good at being able to suss that out. One example is like with the proliferation of AI, right? Quite often I'll like find myself in a thread that got started and I'll see this one comment downvoted into oblivion. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And like you read it and it's like, oh wow, yeah, they found out this was a bot pretty fast, right? The more tactical answer for you is internally we have a whole like trust and safety team that is set up to be able to find where there is, what's the right word I'm looking for, congregation of bad actors, right? So there's certain signals that we have where we can see, okay, this is not really real content, or this is somebody who's trying to like influence the site in a negative way.
Right. And I suppose in the past, the worry was perhaps bot farms or large groups of people coming together to sway conversation in one direction. But I suppose, as you mentioned, the future threat then is the threat of AI being sophisticated enough to be able to produce that content on its own. Like, is that something you guys are worried about, that AI will be more prevalent on the platform to drive opinion? It's a cat and mouse game, right? Because the AI tools to detect that type of abuse becomes better as well, right?
Yeah, there is. I totally forgot the stat, but we were talking with somebody from our research team a couple of weeks ago, and they had mentioned that the older a comment or the older a thread, the more credibility and trust that comment tends to have, which I thought was like kind of interesting. So, even going back to you being on the site for 20 years, if there was a comment about like, hey, where's the best places to travel in Italy, right? Maybe some of that stuff is still pretty relevant, right? I'd say on like the AI search LLMs, I mean, we are the number one most cited source of what's the word I'm looking for? The number one most cited source of data, right, for LLMs, right? So if somebody is researching any topic under the sun, the same reason that you come to Reddit, that I come to Reddit, those LLMs are like looking to Reddit for like that summarized take on a particular topic. Part of the other reason too that we've like rolled out Reddit Answers is this ability to be able to like summarize 20 years of conversation on the site. And so I find myself using Reddit Answers now for the recent vacation that we were talking about before and helping like plan that. I also use it for like small little things of like how I need a quick recipe for this and I don't want to read through a recipe blog that has like endless affiliate links. And so with this, I'd say there's like two really big players in like this AI space right now. One is, are you creating models? And I think if you drive down 101 in San Francisco Bay Area, there's a lot of billboards that talk about building AI models. Or do you sit on data? And there's not many places that can say they have 20 years of real authentic human conversation and verification on the data side. So I think in that sense, like we're in a pretty unique place. Technology changes, right? Like a couple of years ago, it was like combating bots. A couple of years ago, we have to deal with political stuff and like, users coming together to try to influence the site. 10 years ago, it was influencers and like, how annoying are they on the site? So I think like the bar always is moving. And it's a matter of both the trust that we have in our platform to self-regulate itself and also like the folks that we have on our team internally at Reddit that can help combat that and get ahead of it.
Yeah, brilliant. And I mean, that's also an opportunity on the commercial side of the business, right? The fact that you are sitting on that incredible amount of data, right? LLM and AI branch of their company. Question mark, I suppose, right now in the US specifically, where this is heading. Is that content proprietary or could it be gated so it has to be sold to be trained and so on and so forth? I don't know if that's something you guys talk about as well. How do you think about the future of LLMs taking advantage of that data, perhaps?
We have partnerships with like a bunch of different LLMs to train their models on that Reddit conversation data. So for us, it's incredibly valuable, right? I think the thing that's really interesting that we are on the cusp of is, there's like the data side of it, which is hard to replicate, right? I think you talk about like the Twitter example, you talk about us, you talk about YouTube, Wikipedia. There's only so many places on the internet where you have really, really rich conversations that have been happening for potentially decades at a time. And so I think in that sense, relatively future-proofed, right, from sort of curveballs that get thrown our way. I think the interesting thing for the Reddit side is how fast something like Answers has changed both user behavior, like our own users, Redditors, how fast it's also changed how brands want to interact on the platform. And then, just like what that changes for like the use case of Reddit, right? When I don't go to Google anymore for searches, right? And,
Exactly.
In 1997, when Google launched, I mean, you had a great 20-year run of being the place to go for search and on the internet. And I think all of us would probably agree, and you can do this right now, go on Google or go on your search engine of choice, maybe it's Bing, and type in what's the best crypto app, right? And you're going to get a lot of sponsored links. And then you're going to probably get some affiliate blogs. And then somewhere in there, maybe you'll actually start to get some discussions, right? Part of the reason that Reddit was the number 6 most searched term on Google last year is people are typing in, what's the best crypto app? Reddit. So that they get those Reddit results instead of the sponsored links and all the things that you might not know are actually real. And so Reddit Answers, if you go on the app or if you go on the website, it can bring you to this new product that we have called Answers for consumers, where you can type in that exact same thing. And so for anyone listening right now, go onto your search engine of choice, type in what's the best crypto app or best sports betting app or best casual game to play while I'm at the airport. Do that on Google and do that on Reddit Answers, and you're going to get very, very different results. I think one is going to show you more of that affiliate link, more of the sponsored content things that have become so common, right, for our internet experience. And the other is going to be more human beings like Ryan and Pierre and other folks talking about, I use this one, or I'm really passionate about this one, or here's the pros and cons associated with every single one. And I think especially so with something that is pretty research driven, right? Like I have one crypto app on my phone. I'm probably not going to have 2 or 3 or multiple, right? And so I'm going to probably spend a disproportionate amount of time researching that thing before I commit to it. And, you think about the pain in the neck that it is to intertwine your finances into like an app, right? Of I have to link accounts, I have to do this, I have to do the 2-factor authentication, yada, yada, yada. And so the more time that I'm doing researching from a trusted place, the better. And so that's like the real difference in use case that we've seen with AI as being able to summarize those 20 years of conversations. Maybe crypto wasn't around 20 years, but like you can imagine sort of how people are starting to use AI search on Reddit compared to sort of like traditional search across the rest of the web.
Yeah, it's a great point, and that's part of my habits as well. When I'm looking for recommendations for anything, it's difficult to go on a site like Yelp or TripAdvisor or to Google, because you are just going to be met with SEO optimized content, and it's really, really, really difficult to find that organic opinion. Even if a site looks authentic, it's really hard to know whether this is swayed by some affiliate backdrop or if it's a paid content to promote some brand or whatnot. But the kind of trust signal there that a Reddit community brings, a Reddit thread in a popular community, you just know that it's very difficult to sway a community to with hundreds of thousands of users to
100%.
Push a certain opinion. You just know that there is that additional trust there, and it's a very unique place to be in your position to have that. Very difficult to disrupt that for sure, especially the bigger community gets.
And Pierre, I think you bring up a good point, right? Like if you go on like the r/personal finance subreddit, I mean, last I checked, I think it was like 22 million users are there. And that's one of tens of thousands of different subreddits that are focused on finances. There's stocks, there's WallStreetBets, there's cryptocurrency for beginners. There's like so many different variations, like every single different coin is going to have its own thing. And so it might take some time for a brand to be able to become recommended by a community. It might be really fast to not become recommended by a community. But I think that information that's there is incredibly valued because it's validated by these people that are in the community. Like, you have to be a really passionate individual to be contributing to a finance community, right? Whether you're a beginner or you're an expert, you've been doing it for 5 years or 50 years. If you're adding valuable content and like the community deems it's valuable content to that community, your opinion on things is going to matter, but then also people are going to get into conversations, debates about it. And I think that adds so much to the validity and the trust that people have about a certain recommendation. And so if I'm going and trying to find what's this best app that I should download, or, I'm looking for a new, I don't know, piece of like kitchen equipment, right? Like, this is a good place that I'm going to go because, if you go into the cooking subreddit, these are people that are pretty passionate about cooking. They're going to know more than I about this certain thing. So I'm going to tend to like trust their advice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just that like authenticity that drives engagement. And it's just really difficult for a brand, let's say, them to sway opinions of people. People are going to fall back into that authenticity and going to prefer another trend that is more authentic. I would say, though, the only time I've ever seen a brand sneaking into a mainstream meme is I don't know if you've seen the Kermit the Frog meme when he's drinking a tea. That's none of my business. Do you know which brand is that?
No.
Lipton
oh,
tea.
That's great.
If you Google it, yeah, incredible. So if you Google, Lipton tea meme or Kermit the Frog, that's none of my business meme, you see the Kermit the Frog drinking the tea, like this is none of my business, and then there's a little Lipton etiquette there. Like, I don't know how that happened, but one time I saw a thread where someone posted that meme without the Lipton logo. And people were complaining, like, you're editing, that's the original meme, I don't care if it's sponsored, that's the original meme. They were defending it. That's the only time I ever saw that. If that was a play by Lipton marketing team, congratulations.
Pretty great.
Ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not to make this entire conversation about AI, but like that has been an interesting change in how brands are also thinking about Reddit. If we would have, a couple of years ago, right, when we were starting the commercial side of Reddit and selling to advertisers, pretty straightforward approach that us and like our peers would have, right? We have an audience, and we think that this audience is valuable for all the reasons that we've been talking about, right? The authenticity, the unduplicated reach, like they're uniquely here, and a lot of them aren't on other platforms. And depending on like what you're trying to do, maybe you're trying to build your brand, maybe you're trying to interact with a community, maybe you're trying to get app downloads or somebody to go buy your widget on their site. We would have solutions for that and like work with brands to place ads, promoted posts within the site. An interesting that's been happening in the last year or so is brands are coming to us saying, hey, when I go on Gemini or I go on Claude or when I go on OpenAI, ChatGPT, and I typed in something about like, hey, what's the most recommended car to buy? I know that my brand is coming up, and that number one cited source is always Reddit. And so what the conversations that we're now having with a lot of brands is, hey, I know that Reddit is getting sourced as like the cited information for these LLMs. I know that people's search behavior is changing because of all the things that we talked about how search has evolved, and folks are using AI search instead. So how can I get to the source, right, and start to have a relationship or start to have influence over the Reddit side of things, right? So that when Reddit's data is being utilized to summarize things in AI, that my brand is a part of the conversation in a way that feels real and authentic and what we actually want to be out there. And so, the tools have changed, but I'd say like the recommendations haven't. I think people don't want to be sold to on Reddit, right? Like they don't want a brand coming in and saying, oh my God, this is how great we are. Here's all our thing. Here's a fire sale about the XYZ, right? Like that's quickly going to get you probably downvotes and no one wants to actually talk to you. It's the same way as like if you would enter into a dinner party with friends and you're like a stranger and you just talk about how awesome you are. Like that's kind of awkward, right? And so instead, what we recommend for folks is, show what is your actual value, right? Think about everything that you do on Reddit are you contributing to that community? And maybe it's not a community that's about you, right? Maybe it's about whatever industry you're in, right? And it could be something as simple as just upvoting now and then, or it could be something as simple as starting to like make a comment that's not about you, right? And just like your industry perspective on something. And the more and more people start to associate with you, you start to build that brand recognition on the platform. We, about I think a year ago, rolled out Reddit Pro. It's a free tool. It's available for any brand, where you can see like what is the positive sentiment, the negative sentiment about your brand. Where are people talking about you? Are there specific communities where that sentiment is changing? And then for those brands, we then have like a toolkit where they can come in and see, okay, here's like what we recommend you do. Here's sort of some things that you need to focus on for education, to get through whatever challenge you're trying to get through. Or here's where you have super fans. This is like where you should lean into something and maybe do a free form ad where it's like explaining more of your solution, or do an AMA. You know, people really want to maybe hear from you here, whether it's something that you're trying to roll out for like product feedback, or you're actually trying to get through, you know, maybe a sticky situation that your brand is entering into. And so that is like a really interesting change that I think that we're seeing, both from the AI search side of things, but then also how like brands are now starting to be much more active on the platform.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation around how brands can be successful on Reddit, because there's that whole culture aspect that you need to be very mindful of, right? So it's a really fine line. Like if you take a step that is like out of tune with the community, you can really be punished for that, right? But on the other hand, if you are able to kind of integrate with that culture and understand it, then there are some incredible opportunities on the other hand. I think you mentioned in the prep call, Ryan, that brands that are active on Reddit gets a lot better result than on other platforms. Right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, you know, the Reddit Pro and the Reddit Answers has been able to give brands an easier way in, right, than they had in the past. Because now you don't have to scrape through hundreds of thousands of different communities and subreddits to understand who's talking about you and where are they talking about you and where do you need to lean in, right? You can decide, okay, this is a community of people that are fans, right? Here, I'm going to talk to these folks maybe a different way. Here's a community where there are people that like don't really trust us, right? Or there's like misinformation going on about our brand. And so like for there, we can decide, how do we want to interact with them? Do we want to like take on some of these challenges head on? One of the folks I give a lot of credit to is, Robinhood did an AMA at like the height of WallStreetBets, right? And
it takes courage.
It takes a lot of courage, right? I don't think a lot of brands would have leaned into that in the way that they had. And, they were getting a lot of heat from the community. And Vlad ended up doing an AMA, not saying every single question went his way in terms of how the community responded. But I think the community also recognizes like, hey, like somebody's coming in here, they're addressing like the points. We might not agree with every single point that they end up making, but that goes a long way to be able to showcase, hey, we hear you. Like we hear that you're frustrated. Here's the things that are kind of not true, and we need to like talk about that. Here's the stuff that, all right, that's some valid criticism. Like what a brand decides to do from that, I think really sets them on a very different trajectory for themselves as a brand, but also like the trust that a community has in them, right? And you can imagine if a different brand was going through something like that and did a very polished PR statement, that would go nowhere. You'd probably get more hate from that.
Yeah.
Or if somebody like completely just puts their head in the sand and avoids it too, that's not necessarily gonna go their way. But like being able to meet like a challenge head on, I think it's a courageous thing, but it's also like the smart thing as a brand, right? Like that these folks are going to be talking about you. There's a Robinhood subreddit that is not run by Robinhood. These are just fans of your brand. Like these are people that are so passionate about your app. They're posting every single day about what they are doing in your app. Like you'd be crazy to not talk to those humans. And so,
yeah, exactly.
We pick out like the examples that are spicy, right? Because like that's what gets attention. But I think there's also other brands that just like have a good standing with communities or are leaning in and trying to like genuinely add value to those things too. And I think that's the thing that I'd love to see more and more, right? Because if I don't know, if I'm thinking about buying like a coffee maker, right? Yeah, like there's parts of me that wants to go into like the espresso subreddit and go into the coffee machine subreddit and like do research. But if there was like a brand there that was like, hey, here are the pros and cons about our actual thing, and it wasn't some hyper curated, very brandy video, all super polished, and they were actually addressing what like the pros and cons of their solution is, like even if it's like a slightly inferior product, I might want that product more because at least I see like, okay, they're leaning into it.
Yeah, no, it's such a great example, right, with the Robinhood situation where they did that AMA, because it shows the human side as well.
Yeah.
And even if they take a lot of heat in that AMA, there is that underlying feeling that this is a human company that we are dealing with, that are making mistakes and making imperfect answers. And I think there is like a deeper underlying trend in the marketing world in general, where we are coming from polished PR responses is the only way to get any form of opinion from the CEO. And we want to see that authenticity from brands today. You know, also, let's say in the multimedia world, we are coming from really polished, good looking, good edited videos in our TV screens as ads, you know, into more organic, human, authentic TikTok videos that shows more the human and organic and authentic kind of side of human beings. We want to connect with each other at the end of the day. And I think that's true for consumers as well. We want to be able to connect with brands, and people are not perfect. So when we see polished PR statements, we feel maybe a mistrust there. And in the world of politics, you know, you're over on your side of the pond. Perhaps that's why your president rose to fame to some extent as well, because there wasn't that, you know, polished front, for better or for worse, you know, whichever side you're on. But nonetheless, that is what people connected with, that they felt that they could trust more what was said, perhaps. Yeah. And, you know, your platform plays perfectly into that human and authentic side of things, because you just cannot escape that fact that if you come to Reddit with polished, perfect statements, people see through it in 0.1 seconds. So my next question to you, Ryan, would be, if you like Reddit traditionally has been quite ad averse in that regard, because perhaps for this reason, that the traditional way of doing adverts hasn't maybe connected with the community. But now the company is, of course, taking a different approach in that regard. And so I want to ask you, kind of like, how are you how do you become successful as a brand going down the advertisement route on Reddit as well?
Yeah, you know, for a long time, the solution was promoted posts, right? And, you know, that was, I don't want to say our only ad unit for a while, but like one of the few. And that's like the easiest toe in the water for being able to start advertising, right? You don't have to have comments on if you don't want to. You can run sort of whatever messaging that you're looking to run. But I think like I'm really happy the last few years there's been this acceleration of options for folks. I'll talk about like a couple really high level. Like one is our conversation placement. You think about like everything that we have been talking about. We haven't been talking about a feed, right? Like you would have on Instagram or on Snap or anything like that. We've been talking about like the actual conversations that happen and all the comments. And so allowing a brand to be able to target a specific topic, a keyword, a community, and have their message be like included within the comments as a standalone unit is like a really helpful part to be able to see where they can start to influence that journey. Taking that a step further, that's where I'd say leaning into things like that Reddit Pro and Reddit Answers side. Like we've been working with brands these last couple of years now to be able to understand, okay, where are you being talked about and where did you maybe not know that you were being talked about? There was an example that we had with a cycling app. And, you know, you would think the top places for cycling app human beings, right, are going to be in cycling communities, maybe fitness communities, folks focused on like healthy eating. One of the top places that brand was getting mentioned was in a PC building community. And now I would not associate PC building with like a cycling app, right? And it turned out that like a lot of people that were building like these really serious gaming battle stations and rigs also happen to be people that like needed that type of setup for like pretty advanced analytics that they were doing on cycling, right? For like their home bike setup, right? And you're never going to find that from a Google search. You're never going to find that from an audience like here's who is a part of this community type of thing. You're really only going to understand that if you like understand the communities and understand sort of like these summaries, right, of where you're getting talked about and where you're not. And so that's been like a really interesting thing to be able to see is where can folks obviously like play to their super fans, where can they see where there are detractors, where can they see that hey, this is like actually a community that needs us and that we didn't necessarily think of before. I think this all goes back to the amount of research that Redditors do before they decide to take action on a thing. A couple of months ago, I think back in May, we did a joint case study with Adjust, who's a mobile measurement provider, an MMP, and Sensor Tower, who has a tremendous amount of analytics across like the entire app industry. And what we did was we took a look at for a download to occur that was driven from Reddit, right? So somebody saw that ad on Reddit and then took action. How we compared to social, how we compared to like the rest of digital, right? When you look at day one, Redditors if they spent money on the app compared to if they came from other social, there's 41% more spend on Reddit than if they were on a social platform. And you compare it to other places like non-social, it was 159% higher. And like you go through the other metrics, right? You think about retention rates on day one, it was 12% higher. Day 30, it was 15% higher. Similar sort of stats for like the time spent of like how much time people are spending in the app once they download it from Reddit. And I think that all goes to both the community itself, right? The amount of research that they're doing on a thing before they commit to it. And now if you're a brand, if you start interacting with that community, oh my God, like that's such a huge advantage that you have that nobody else is maybe doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it goes a little bit to the point where if you are a company that is really doing things well, and if you're doing things right, you will find great success on Reddit, right? But if you are an organization that is cutting corners and copying others and so on, like maybe you want to as well on Reddit, and that plays that to that organic feel and the fact that the community will figure out. So like, I think you have to ask yourself that maybe as a company, if you are that company that really wants to scream to the world about all the great things that you are doing, the community on Reddit will recognize that and give you feedback along the way, perhaps how you can become even better. I want to ask you as well, in regards to subreddits as well. So there are many great companies that have been successful at creating their own subreddits, as you mentioned, Robinhood being one of them, and it's kind of like an ultimate achievement for a brand to have a subreddit dedicated to themselves of people who are that level of that have that level of passion for your company, right? But also there are organizations that are able to start their own subreddits too and build kind of perhaps their own community around that as well. I'm curious to ask, like, what are perhaps some of the great examples of organizations that have been successful to build their own subreddits? Should every organization consider to build their own subreddit and build that community and try to nurture a community in that regard? From our industry, we have DraftKings, for example, which is one of those communities that is really popular on Reddit, whereas there are other brands that have not gone down that route and don't have that kind of sprawling community. So I'm really, really curious to hear your thoughts on should companies consider creating their own subreddits around their own brands? When should they not? And some great examples.
So there are great examples. I'll say this, like, this is maybe my personal opinion. I think you can't have a better situation than something like the Robinhood situation, right? Where there's such passionate users that have created a subreddit community about your brand and spend the entire time talking about your brand and, all the different ins and outs of that, right? Like how special that is, right? They're not talking about finance overall. They're not talking about cryptocurrency overall. They're not talking about investing overall. They're talking about all of those things specifically within your brand, right? So like that's pretty cool. Now there are brands that have gone ahead and like started their own, but I would say just as the users of those communities are passionate, just as the moderators are passionate of making sure that community is a healthy place, you need to invest that same amount of time in that. I don't think you can just say like, I'm going to create, r/whatever my brand name is, and like just post about how great I am and people are going to like want to come there. Fidelity is a great example, right? Like another, traditional, maybe investing firm that started up a subreddit. They've got a huge team at Fidelity that runs that subreddit. And I think like if you go on that community page right now, you'll see they're not talking about, hey, buy our product and here's this new thing that we're rolling out that you should totally subscribe to, or you should use us and nobody else. They're talking about education. They're doing AMAs to, see like what questions the community has. They're doing other fun sort of contests, right? Like they did like a hat giveaway a little while ago, and users really wanted the Fidelity hat with like the little upvote logo, right? So it's I think you have to think about it as the same way, that you're not just there to be a billboard on the side of the highway trying to scream attention at people. It's like, what is the actual value that you're adding? And so quite often, like we do get questions, hey, I'd love to have my own subreddit, or I'd love to do something bigger on the platform. The recommendation is almost always start just understanding where you're getting talked about. Start to understand whether or not that the things that people are saying is valid. Is it true? Is it authentic? Is it something that you should pay attention to? Like, should you actually change your solution or your product based off of like what people are saying? And then start to engage with that community. Start to add value. Like that's the biggest thing. Just add value, right? It goes back to like the other things that we were talking about, right? Of like entering into that party and just talking about how awesome you are. No one has the appetite for that. And so I think more often than not, I would say brands should not start their own subreddit, but should they be active within subreddits? Yes.
Right, to start their company accounts and be active, even perhaps beyond when people talk about your specific brand, but say that you are a brand that is selling gym clothes or something along those lines. Perhaps you want to be active in the athletics subreddit generally, just to give good advice or give your opinion on things, or wherever you can add value from your perspective, even if it's not directly linked to your brand. Perhaps if there is that angle that you can find perhaps as a brand, just to be active and give value to the community, they'll respect that at the end of the day, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, you see this I think almost most commonly within like gaming subreddits, where I get hooked on a game and spend hundreds of hours playing it. Yeah. And there's a lot of other people like me that get hooked on that game and start to spend hundreds of hours playing it. And it's so cool when somebody who works at that game comes in and makes a comment in the thread, right? And it doesn't need to be a life-changing comment, but just knowing that they're there, knowing that they're also passionate about the thing that we're passionate about, that's great. And so it just makes me know that they didn't just create this thing and just, let it go and run itself. That there's still people behind that. There's still people that are real human beings that care about this thing enough to make sure that they are supporting that community. There's folks that take it further, right? We'll do like an AMA, or they'll talk about a new release coming out within the game and get people's feedback of, what'd you like about this version versus the other version, and start to curate that. But even just like the bare minimum of saying hi goes a long way.
Yeah, it's true. So in regards to like the balancing of, creating a really integrity first platform, authentic platform of Reddit, at the same time as trying to be a profitable company and allowing brands to advertise and taking up that space, in the comments and so on. There's probably always going to be that temptation to do more, right? So say, for example, for brands that want to create those subreddits, allowing them to pay to become popular, for example, or there's a lot of ideas you can think of to monetize Reddit more than you do today. And there's been so many controversies throughout the years, right, with Reddit, where mistakes have been made, so to say, and the community has really risen at that point, So like, how do you think about, like, in the future, just monetizing the website, but also keeping that balance in place of, you have a community that is like your own watchdog, which is also maybe a difference to, say, Facebook or Instagram or others, where, the platform just kind of hammers you with more and more adverts all the time. Like, you are a bit of a, you're in a bit of a handcuffed situation in that regard, which maybe plays to your favor long term, because you don't have to deal with that temptation to constantly build revenues to constant more adverts, which then pushes the users away from the platform. I don't know if that's something you guys talk about as well, like how to keep that balance between adhering to your users, but also allowing that monetization to take place.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. The interesting thing is, I mean, there's more human beings than there are brands, thankfully, right? And
Yes.
so I think the community angle is just always going to be the most important thing to protect, right? Like the site doesn't exist without people contributing to it that are real, that are authentic, that are sharing the things that they share. And so at our core for 20 years is being a community-driven platform, not a brand-driven platform. Right now, if folks want to be a part of that community because they are a brand, again, they have to abide by the same rules as the users themselves, right? Like, are they contributing value? Are they doing things that are not nefarious? Like all of those things that we uphold for everybody else. I think to that like internal toolkit of what we recommend to brands. Listen, not everybody wants to start a community. Not everybody wants to even engage, right? Like most folks are probably just starting off of, I have this thing I'm trying to sell, or I have this service that I want to educate people about. How do I do it? And the vast majority of the answers is the answer that probably the rest of the internet has of, well, you should probably run an advertisement, and like, here's the ways that you can target, and here's the solutions that we have to be able to optimize that to go do a thing, right? I would love it if more brands were on the platform, but they have to be good actors within that too, right? I don't think we want to get to this place where we're telling people just to promote their own subreddits and like everything is a walled garden within that, because it takes away the authenticity and the trust within the platform. There's a study that came out a couple of years ago where Reddit is like the #1 most trusted site on the internet, above Amazon, above Google, above all these different places. A huge delta from our peers, in social, right? And I think that's the thing that we hold as in higher regard as possible, right? Like you see what happens when you lose that trust, and so making sure that that is paramount in every decision that we make for everything from our relationship with brands and making sure that they trust our advice when we say, you should probably do an educational AMA here before you try to do anything else, right? Because you have some like sentiment thing to get through, or hey, this community actually loves you and they would love for you to be fun, right? Like this is a very silly community full of memes, and we've had brands lean into that, and like folks end up reacting really positively from that. And so there's not this like one size fits all for everything, because there are hundreds of thousands of different communities, and every single one is going to have its own language, its own vernacular, its own way of doing communicating with each other. There's meme communities. There's communities that are 100% no images, just text, right? And so because there's no one size fits all, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer for, hey, brand, how should you interact here? Or should you start your own subreddit or not?
Yeah. And once again, there is this really fascinating thing about Reddit that has been able to keep that, stay true to itself for such a long time, where generally you will see like an arc of organizations with network effects, where say a TripAdvisor or a Yelp will start off by offering a really good organic service to its users. Then by time there's this pressure to monetize, and at the expense of the integrity. And fast forward a couple of years, and you get to this point where it's just really hard to know what is an organic review or what is a paid kind of opportunity. Like you have to pay in order to be listed, and so on and so forth. Same goes for like any network-driven organization, like say a nightclub, for example, start off with like they get the cool crowd to the new nightclub, then eventually the uncool crowd comes and the cool crowd moves on, right? And there's this arc of like the service or the nightclub in this case become more and more popular, it reaches a peak and then it kind of dies off. And when that snowball effect happens downwards, it's almost impossible to stop it. But because Reddit is held accountable by its users, you never really reach that arc. It has kept you in check in that regard, and that's also a bit of the magic here, I think, as well, that puts you in a really unique position.
I couldn't agree more, Pierre. I think you're only going to see more of this with the popularity of AI, right? The more and more that you are using AI, seeing search results from AI, people still want to trust and verify that information. And so the only way that you can really trust and verify is that club cool? And I'm certainly not the person to be able to judge if that club is cool or not. I'm probably
Ryan, come on.
I'm in bed by 9:30. The only way to be able to verify that is talk to the human beings that have actually been there, right? And again, if you go back to if it's a blog full of affiliate links, I'm going to have some doubt there. If it is a summarized LLM result from like maybe a source that I don't know if I trust or I don't know about, again, I'm gonna want to do some digging in on that. But if I know like, hey, this is a local subreddit full of users that really care about this scene and have a history on like their posts and their comments of trying out different places and giving reviews of those things, oh man, like that has so much more weight to it than something else. And so I think you're only going to see more and more of people wanting to verify whether or not information is real. And I'm not saying that's always going to be Reddit, but I think we play a really unique role in that right now, and I think even more so coming forward.
Yeah, brilliant, Ryan. We're going to start rounding off the conversation a little bit to something more lighthearted here. Throughout the years, there's been plenty of controversies and really big cultural moments that have arose from Reddit, and I think that maybe the most prominent one that I can think of is like the epic short squeeze that was conducted by WallStreetBets on GameStop, right? To like fight the capitalists, that permeated throughout the whole capital markets globally, right? And that short squeeze is still taking place to this day. There's been some epic battles between different subreddits and cultural moments within the community. And so I want to ask you, like, what are some of the most memorable and favorite moments throughout time that you've been a part of at Reddit?
Do you know? I mean, you have to know this. You know our place?
Place? Yeah, with the battles of the flags.
Yeah. I mean, like, oh man, like we that was one of my favorite moments. And again, when like they brought it back a couple of years ago, staying up way late and like banding together with the group that I was a part of okay, like we're gonna try to like make this so I'm a big Gojira fan. They're a heavy metal band, and there was a few of us that like decided, okay, we're gonna go to like the France area of place and try to get like a whale driven, which is like a logo from this band. And so like trying to band together with those individuals and like fighting pixel by pixel to keep your place in place, like that was, I mean, so fun, so Reddit-y. You can't do that anywhere else. And, just such a like unique moment in time that if you tried to explain that to somebody who is maybe not on the platform, they'd be like, what you're coloring in little pixels and somebody's taking them when you color them in? We're like, yeah, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
And the epic, did you see the video that went viral recently from our place where the Canadians couldn't draw their leaf on our place? So there's like a timeline, there's a video, that is sped up across time where, the Canada has their space at our place. And the maple leaf, they have a really hard time to draw it. It's so brilliant,
And like, oh man, like we talk about all this serious stuff about like investing and parenting and this and that, but that's like the thing that also is a huge part of Reddit is just the silliness and like the eclectic nature of it. I mean, like trolling whether or not somebody can draw a maple leaf for hours on end is just I love it.
and then what made it even more fun was that the German part of the map as a troll, they drew a perfect maple leaf on their German flag just to show that they could do it.
Very, very German of them.
Exactly. Perfect. Spotless. That was fun. That was, as a proud Swedish person, that was my favorite moment.
Brilliant.
Awesome. So to wrap things up today, Ryan, I have a few rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, let's go. Okay, what's your favorite subreddit?
Favorite subreddit is motorcycle logistics. So it's I think a relatively small subreddit. It is all people taking pictures or participating themselves in putting way too many things on a motorcycle. And so this could be like people are transporting lumber, people are transporting Christmas trees, anything that you can imagine, and just like the silliness and arguably dangerous elements of trying to do that on two wheels.
I can imagine my recently, I don't know if favorite is the right word, but let's say most fascinating find is our AI is my boyfriend. That became that one was really fascinating, and it's like really with the time now with GPT-5 coming out, and there was like a lot of backlash with GPT-4o being removed, and it turns out that there's this massive amount of people that have created AI boyfriends and girlfriends for that matter, and there's a subreddit dedicated to the people that are building relationships, actual relationship and marriages with the AI. And for me, it's just fascinating discovering subcultures. Like, how is this working? Like, I want to know. That was a fascinating find of mine.
We'll probably start to see that in Am I the Asshole or Relationship Advice.
That's a great one too.
My AI boyfriend said this. Who's right?
Yeah. Am I the asshole or the AI? Okay. Second question. What's the most underrated Reddit use case?
Recipes. Easily recipes. So I like to cook dinner every single night. I don't think particularly good at it. And so every single time, even if I've made the recipe 10 times, I need to know how much I need to measure and this and that. And, you go onto a recipe blog and it's 15 paragraphs of backstory you didn't want just to be able to get to the precise measurements you need for whatever you're making. You go on Reddit Answers, type in, I don't know, sea bass, 425 degrees, baking time. And you will get just only the bullets of what you're supposed to do, and it's very clean. Nice. Yeah.
I gotta try that tonight. Impress my girlfriend. Okay. Third question is, what's your favorite AMA moment?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't have a specific answer. I mean, there's ones that get a lot of attention, right? Like Keanu Reeves doing one, or where there's silly ones that brands do. I think Chucky, the horror movie doll, did one a couple of years ago. My favorite is when it's not a celebrity or the CEO of a company, right? For a long time, one of the most popular AMAs was a vacuum repair guy, and he came back multiple times. And people were just fascinated to understand, hey, this brand always advertises that they're the best vacuum. Are they actually any good? And he'd be like, no, they're crap, and here's why they're crap. And and he would have his recommendations. And it was just such a unique look of I don't know anybody who's a vacuum repair guy. I want to know what this guy's opinions are.
I love that. That's a great one. And the final question here is, what would you say is your most significant aha moment from Reddit, when something really struck you as something really incredible, or where you learned something new that you didn't expect, or anything like that? Your biggest aha moment?
Okay, so this is a deep cut. So I'm originally from New York. We have moved out to San Francisco 15 years ago. But my entire family's out in New York. A lot of our friends from growing up are there. And since having a kiddo, one of the ways that we have bonded, and also one of the ways that we have stayed connected with our friends back home, is by becoming fans of the New York Mets, a baseball team. And the New York Mets have a long history of failing, and some few ups, but a lot of downs, especially right now.
Yeah.
And I am in every single game. There is a thread of users on the New York Mets subreddit, and it's been like a pretty emotional connection for me, right? Like I know, like I see the same users every single day. I see people kind of going through like all the emotional ups, all the emotional downs. Right now it's downs, of how we're doing. And that aha moment was like the connection for what it meant for, missing back home, being able to like talk with my friends and family back home that are Mets fans and go to the games, and still feeling connected to that community, even though I'm 3,000 miles away.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to round off the podcast today. Ryan, thank you so much for dedicating this time. Thank you for completely nerding out with me on Reddit history and Reddit culture with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Can't wait to meet you in Vegas and follow up in person.
Yes.
And thank you so much for giving us the insights on the latest and greatest.
Pierre, absolutely appreciate it. I mean, love getting to talk to you about all this stuff. I know we're going to hang out both in Vegas and then also like when you come visit to San Francisco. And anytime you want to invite me to Sweden or Malta, I am up for that trip as well.
The door is always open here, my friend. All right. All the best.
Thanks,
Thank you so much, Ryan.
All right.